You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there.
We're going to be covering Agile in banking. Thank you for your patience for those that are on the line that waited or have just recently joined. We have a couple of special guests that are joining us today. So we've got Philippa Scholl, who's joined us. Philippa, do you want to quickly just share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I work as a freelance consultant. I've done that for about 9 years. So during that time, I've worked in quite a few different banking PMOs across Australia and seen a few different variations on Agile or not quite so Agile or very Agile. So most of my focus is on product development. And product management. So I sort of have that view on it, but I've done some of the project management as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Philippa. We also have Lucy, who will be joining us in just a moment. She's just reconnecting. Lucy has an extensive background in banking, in particular in some of the larger banking institutions, both locally as well as in the UK, and accountant by trade as well. And then myself personally, I've been spending quite a lot of time in and around the project program and portfolio management governance space and around innovating around Agile approaches to what would be deemed traditional and helping organisations bridge the gap between what you would constitute as traditional and a more Agile way of working, seeing some of the challenges that exist in the industry as well. So we'll be hopefully sharing some insight to that. I'm keen to just also open the floor for questions or comments throughout. So please share any questions or comments that you might have at any time. And you can also use the chat function as well. Just a quick around the room, your name and your role and what you're hoping to get out of today. So we might connect. We might start. Lani, do you want to share?
Sorry, my name's Lani. I've just returned back from the UK, but I'm based in Melbourne, and I work as an innovator at a law firm, but I'm an Agile coach, also lean design thinking as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Lani. Laura, did you want to, we'll go to Nina. Nina, did you want to share?
Sure. So I work with Fatima at Agile Management Office and started as an intern, and originally I worked in marketing predominantly, but I'm getting very involved in projects and the world of project management and governance and Agile and so on.
Awesome, thanks. Sue, did you want to go next?
Hi everyone, could you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I just working as a project infrastructure project. So I'd like to learn a bit more about the Agile concept and also even in a different industry.
Amazing, thank you. Lucy, we're just saying what we're hoping to get out of today and what we do.
Cool. So I'm Lucy. I work at ANZ in the PMO space and predominantly in regulatory projects. So I've just rolled off the APRA remediation program in retail and commercial, and I'm in institutional at the moment on a project that is around know your customer. So for me, I'm just really interested in doing a bit of a deep dive into the industry and seeing what everybody else has got going on.
Awesome, thank you. Sophie?
Hi everyone. I'm currently in a role as a project analyst at Agile Management Office. I obviously do a lot of analytical work for external projects as well as internal projects at AMO. kind of having that end-to-end overview of what we do and how we work with the clients and stakeholders and everything like that. I'm hoping that today will inspire me to, or inspire us to kind of deep dive into the trends of Agile, and especially when it comes to being industry specific, because I think that that's something that's emerging right now with Agile. And yeah, just talking trends, challenges, everything about Agile in banking.
Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. We'll let others join as they go. I'm going to take us straight into the kickoff part of the session. I'm just going to share my screen so hopefully all of you can see that. Please let me know if you can see that. It's all thumbs up. You can see it? Okay, great. So there's a lot of things that we can cover in terms of Agile in banking, and it probably means different things to different people. Thinking about sort of what we've been seeing at the moment in the industry, it's quite interesting to see that Agile has sort of been, I guess the banks have been leading the stand on Agile. I think they've probably spent a lot more money than some of the other industries perhaps in their exploration of Agile, particularly in Australia, what we've seen with some of the big four banks. Now, obviously, they're quite rigid and structured, and the way that they've had to go about it has been, elongated transformation programs to deploy Agile, which has been quite interesting. So we will just talk about what Agile in banking is, what we're seeing as some of the trends, some of the challenges, and also some of the opportunities. But this will be more of a discussion. So I'm hoping that we can go through this and go through and get your thoughts and questions as we go through. So general overview. We want to kick off first? Philippa, do you want to share your overview of what you're seeing, and then Lucy will go to you next?
Sure.
Sure. So I guess in terms of trends at the moment, I think banks in Australia have now, a lot of them have spent a couple of years investing in sort of Agile transformations. And there's also quite a bit of turnover in the market with people moving around between organizations. So one thing I'm seeing happening is that every different organization has a different flavor of Agile, and they've all got slightly different methodologies. And then when people come together in a new organization and move, they all have different definitions in their minds of how things work. So what I've seen recently in one of my clients is people talk about things and they all make assumptions about what that means, and then people have seen it differently in different places, and so everybody's talking about something totally different, and it takes quite a while for everyone to realize. So I think one of the takeouts from that is being really explicit about what people mean and actually documenting things and definitions, and that to try and avoid those like creeping assumptions, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really relevant because one of the common things we're hearing from a consulting perspective is that organizations say, well, we want to go Agile, and then we say, okay, well, what exactly does that mean to you? And then they refer to another bank or financial institution. They go, we want to do what they did, or what the earlier banks did is they point to the Spotify model or the ING model or whatever it is. So everyone's trying to point to what other people are doing rather than looking at what actually makes sense for them. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that. What about you, Lucy? What's your view and observations?
Yeah, so I think where I'm at with the Agile journey at the moment, so I work at ANZ, and I think it's well publicised their maturity pathway with Agile delivery. They've been certainly investing in training and education for years now, and it's a completely accepted delivery method that I think that most people are pretty comfortable with and confident with in terms of how it works and the mechanics. I think that's something that I kind of see on the daily in terms of like a challenge is how you then match that technique with the mindset that's actually needed to deliver in an Agile way successfully. And what I mean about that is being kind of open to at least try and lean into some of the restrictions that certainly exist in big and complex organizations. like ANZ, even with regard to, like approval channels and the way that we make decisions. And yeah, sometimes it doesn't kind of align with that methodology. And also something that I'm seeing that I think is really interesting is how we bring agility to like setting new strategy as well. So at the moment we've got kind of like 5-year plans, 1-year plans, and then how that translates into agile strategy and responsiveness to changing customer demand. So I think we do it on a tactical level really well. But I think that's probably the next iteration for that I can see people thinking about and starting to talk about how we make strategy more agile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good point, because I think one of the things that we're also seeing is that there are sort of a hybrid approach that's actually being applied, where organizations are putting a subset of agile practices at the team level, but we're seeing this in the banks. They're putting that waterfall type governance at the top level because they're not willing to sort of let go of that control around the funding. And of course, we're talking, $1 billion of project spend annually in some of these organizations. So I think that's one of the things that is very common at the moment. So understanding that balance, I think, is one of the things. Another one that might be worth mentioning as well is we're seeing that organizations overall are moving teams to Agile, but they're actually not bedding down with the right level of change management. So people are getting trained by theorists, not sharing practical opportunities to learn and apply the learnings. And we know it takes quite a long time for people to actually go up that change curve and learn. So it is really interesting to see as well that the increase of business versus technology sort of challenges is still existing, despite the fact that we've supposedly moved to Agile, and these organizations are still having some of those challenges as well. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that disconnect across those functional silos. I'm keen to know from everyone else on the call, is there any current observations that you're seeing in and around the banking and financial services space that maybe you wanted to share? If you do, you're welcome to unmute and call that out.
I'll share. I used to work for NAB, and now work for a small fintech. So that's Alex here. I'm not sure if I can see myself in that Zoom. I found that NAB, it's good. It's interesting getting different perspectives from a larger organisation compared to a smaller organisation. Like the current company I work for is about 100 people, which is quite small. But it is the agility. I think the challenges faced from a large organisation is, I think you mentioned funding. With funding based on project, you don't have what I don't worry about at the moment. I just worry about the resourcing and say, based on this resourcing, what are your priorities, and then deliver based on those priorities. So funding's not as big a concern, and where you have to sort of pitch for funding for your project, on the annual basis or quarterly basis, whenever the funding cycle happens. It makes it difficult. You don't have that certainty. I think they are moving to a sort of backlog prioritization based model. That's one. The other big challenge, I think, is just how teams are set up. There's so many dependencies between teams, because that's how the bank was set up for 30 years, the way they operated. So you can't do stuff quickly, because you're dependent on 10 other teams before you can deliver. So I think that's something I think the banks are moving towards. I think there's a domain model at the moment, but it's hard, it's like changing a Titanic. So, but I think it's, it's very hard. But look, I think in like where I'm currently working, small teams, I have a lot of control how teams are set up. One of the things I want to try to do is make sure the teams are self-empowered and self-sufficient. They don't rely on other teams, because it just becomes dependency hell. And that's with 6 teams. Imagine in a bank you have 100 teams. It's just very hard. And I guess what Agile is about responding to customer feedback. Because if you had a feedback in a customer at a big bank, the time it takes for that to actually, from feedback to getting prioritized to getting requirements and delivered, it's probably quite a long time. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point, Alex. And I think maybe some of that stems, or at least from sort of what we're seeing, is we already, if you think about it, some of the fundamentals of project management is not well understood with our stakeholders, our SMEs, people that are not in project data, just like we wouldn't expect ourselves to understand, the way HR works or finance operates at a detailed level. And then now we're asking our stakeholders who already probably don't have enough time and knowledge around project management fundamentals to actually pick up this thing called Agile, but even project practitioners that are, well versed with project and delivery that are still getting our heads around. So I think it's really
I sort of been thinking about it. It's like the way we've been operating is like the way you've been operating for like the last 30, 40 years. It's command and control, sort of waterfall type thing. The world's changed. We haven't changed the way we work, and these agile practices is changing the way we work to make sure that we're more responsive, we're faster, we're learning. Where I guess you kind of did have that, but just more accelerated level.
Absolutely. Awesome.
And being comfortable with failure as well. I think that's
that's how you learn.
Yeah, but I don't know, there's still a lot of discomfort around that, I think, in bigger kind of corporate structures. I still think it comes with a certain resistance.
Yeah, I think it's maybe learning. Like, I think one of the key things is one metric we want to do is like, if you have a failure, it's how do you get it fixed? If you deploy something in production with Agile, it's deploying constantly. You don't have these long 3-month, 1-year life cycle, deployment cycles. You do it all the time. If there's something wrong, you fix it. But it is a big challenge about that learning, I guess.
One thing I see also is the challenge of the change management upwards, the senior executives, and I think it seems to be a lot harder for them to really understand it, maybe because they're not embedded in the teams and living it day to day. So I've seen a CFO who's sponsoring an agile transformation, and then I've realized actually he thinks that the agile transformation will be a way to cut costs. And then when you realize that there's just a few kind of misconceptions, and again, expecting to still have a funding envelope over the top, then kind of flipping back to waterfall, and then flipping back to like, well, our planning, this was the executive leadership team, we did the planning. And it's like, well, that's very top down. And then it's quite hard to sort of explain, it's like missing the point a little bit, because you can't really be, diplomatic with the senior stakeholders. So I think a few organizations really struggle with that. And also when the senior executives are kind of a bit skeptical, and they'll give it a little bit of a go. And then if it doesn't, as soon as something goes wrong, then they don't give it enough of a chance and don't invest enough in it, and they think it's going to be a magic quick fix.
It's a really good point, Philippa, because if you think about it, like prior to Agile's been around for more than 25 years, so it's not anything new. It's just growing in popularity. But if we take away the concept of Agile, at the end of the day, we're just doing project delivery just differently. You don't hear, prior to the influx of Agile increasing, which I think the banks in the last 5 years have really pushed to the forefront. You don't hear people saying, waterfall sucks, we don't want to do waterfall anymore. Like, I don't know why we're doing that with Agile either. Like, it's delivery. It's just a different mindset and a different way of going about it. So it's really interesting to see how, if you have a bad experience or you don't see a result that you expect to see immediately, you're sort of a little bit sort of turned away from maybe progressing any further with it. So it's a good segue that takes me into one of the questions around, why Agile? One of the things that we often get told as consultants is, well, we want to go Agile. But my question usually to them is, why do you want to go Agile? There's a little slide here I'm happy to share. I won't go through, but just around sort of the history. A lot of people may not know that Agile always been around for a really long time. Some of the concepts of it, such as Scrum, which came from about 1993. There was Agile, sort of mention of Agile from a business lens, more around sort of the 2004. And then obviously with the sort of acceleration of SAFe being sort of the leading and fastest growing methods, everybody sort of talks about Agile as if it's a methodology and that's it. So I think there's a couple of thoughts around sort of why organizations want to go down the Agile path. I personally have seen that there are a number of reasons. In the banking financial services space, it's predominantly been strategic around restructuring, both in the size and the way that the organisation has been structured. So there's some strategic elements there. But I'm keen to know sort of what you've seen in that space. I mean, Lucy, maybe you want to share some thoughts around what you've been hearing and seeing around the reasons why we've gone agile, whether it's a ANZ or other organisations that you might have heard of.
Yeah, I think for me, I probably kind of, in my own mind, have put that into two kind of categories. One, customer responsiveness, and I think, Alex, I completely agree with it, with the point that you made earlier, that like the world has changed now. It's a customer has a requirement, and the competitive landscape is such that expectations are just so much higher. So I think that Agile has been seen as the kind of solution to that, and I guess it has been to some extent. And then the other reason that I think that Agile has become really popular in the areas that I work in is it's almost like the people demand it. So it's the way that people want to work. And I think that but I think that the people, as in the employees, have really pushed it. Vendors have pushed it. And I think it's just the preferred way of working now. There's almost like a containment and a restriction at the thought of, this is my project, this is my project plan, I'm going to finish in 2 years. Like it's a real kind of turn off, I think, for a lot of people.
I'm interested, Lucy, in what you're seeing. Are you at ANZ? Is there a sort of intentional decision to do a project waterfall or a project agile, or are they tending to sort of try to do them all agile and sneaking back into waterfall sometimes?
I think that there is definitely an intention to predominantly adopt agile ways of working with delivery. But just going back to the comment that I made at the beginning, is there's still a whole, kind of like dinosaur of an organization that sits on top of that. And so there's a lot of people that are so gifted in this way of delivery, but then you've got that kind of like shoehorned into an organizational structure that is not agile in other ways. Yeah,
Lucy, there's, I think it's ANZX. It's like a separate funky new organization. Has that sort of been shielded because it has its own sort of separate governance and so forth? Is that? Yeah,
I know that it's probably a bit gossipy, but it's kind of known as ANZ expensive. That's what they that's what they
probably.
So yes, it is shielded, and it is. Yeah, it's definitely got that kind of protection in terms of how it's funded and how it's allowed to progress. But again, there are issues with that as well.
And I guess
that it's costing so much.
Well, my another perception, like from external, so I did used to work at ANZ, but a long time ago, is I mean, it seems like that ANZX have been working on it for quite a while. I'm sure COVID kind of slowed things down, but so it's kind of interesting that one of those reasons for implementing Agile maybe a couple of years ago was this speed to market, and people talked about, well, disruption is coming from fintechs, the banks have to be faster, but I actually haven't seen a lot of evidence of things really speeding up. And when I've seen a few really, I guess, more mature Agile practices, that is when you can see the speed and the momentum building, but I don't see that a lot of the time looking around.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, I guess when you say expensive, is it due to because there's not much sort of outcomes? Like, I guess one of the things with ANZ Plus app, it's quite limited in functionality. Now, if they, I'm not sure if they spend, but it sounds like a lot of money. I guess the expectations is a lot more. You can actually do transactions and international payments or something like that.
That's right. And I guess when you create these kind of structures, it's almost like like an elitist team. I think that with that then comes very, very high expectation. And I think that there's probably, some of that coming into play, I would suggest.
And even though, even though we've outlined some of the reasons as to why they go down the path, particularly in the big fours, for example, seeing firsthand where the business case starts with the business case, and it's so heavily routed around financial benefits. The banks won't do anything that's not financially, or they're limited to do anything that's not financially beneficial, especially with such a large transformational change. But there are other reasons as well. These are just some of the ones that are common as to why Agile matters to them. Not necessarily unique, but one of the things that is unique is I've seen a shift in the last few years around the spending has been predominantly around regulatory and compliance programs of work for the last few years, particularly working with some of these organisations, seeing that that's where a lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of the money has been spent from a program perspective. Now it seems, and maybe it is around that top talent attraction and the desire for growth, they're actually just shifting. So there's an agenda now towards how are we going to compete with the neobanks, setting up their own sort of smaller banks within the larger structures as well, and a number of other things to increase, I guess, their market share and other opportunities as well. I'm interested to know, Philippa, any thoughts from you on sort of why Agile's big? I know you've worked in both the sort of the fintech side as well as the larger organisations. What are you currently seeing around their move to Agile and the interest there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in smaller organizations, it's not necessarily easy. I mean, it's still not that easy. And even I know someone before talked about dependency management, and even trying to set up. We sort of setting up 5 domain or product focused teams, and the intention was they'd all be autonomous. But as this process is going through and the teams are, we're gradually standing up the different product domains, it's becoming evident that the customers are not buying one product. The customers tend to buy products across across those domains, and there's a lot of convergence in banking and payments now. And so even with a small number of teams, it becomes really difficult to manage the dependencies and figure out how those teams are going to work together. And so, you would think it would be easier in smaller organizations, but I'm not sure that it actually is.
They seem to have a problem on the other side. So the smaller sort of fintech space, their problems is around they're trying to grow and they don't have the foundations needed to enable them to scale. They don't have the same level of, I guess, rigor and governance and oversight because they are, in many cases, being injected with all this external funding. And so they're trying to scale rapidly, as Reid Hoffman says, like around building the plane while flying it. Whereas the larger institutions are actually the other way. They've got to refine their governance structures, which is one of the biggest sort of challenges that I'm seeing. So it's interesting how they've got opposing challenges, but obviously it varies again by each of these organisations, but they're all learning from each other, I think, or they're trying to anyway. So let's get into a little bit more detail around some more of the challenges. I just quickly, again, happy to share this if anyone would like to, but I'm not sure if those on the call are familiar with sort of the way that Agile is being rolled out. It's really interesting to see that in the larger banks, it is being typically rolled out at a company-wide level, even if it is starting from a divisional perspective. I've definitely seen it in 3 of the 4 big 4 banks. And then in the sort of more sort of mid-sized financial services firms, sort of mid-sized companies, sort of, 1,000 to 5,000, it seems to be sort of starting within one of the divisions, so within IT or something like that, and then proliferating from sort of mid-level. And then in some of the other organisations, maybe the smaller organisations are outside of the banking finance. I'm seeing it's a lot more within champions within particular sub-functions within an organisation. But yeah, it's really interesting to see that how it's being applied at the moment, the top-down versus bottom-up lens. So yeah, I thought that might be worth sharing. Does anyone want to share how and what they've seen in terms of how Agile's being sort of rolled out in organisations that they've worked in?
Yeah, so for me, it's definitely been top down. So it's yeah, the whole kind of drive has definitely come from really kind of committed senior execs. And I think that on the whole has been a good thing. I think it's really helped with engagement, and it kind of I don't know, it's a big organization, and it's almost like if your boss says you've got to do it, it kind of like stops some of the, the kind of resistance, I guess. And I think that if that hadn't have happened, I don't think it would have stood a chance. You'd have probably just had a couple of people sat in a corner somewhere trying to, yeah. So that my experience has definitely been that, kind of commanded. You will do Agile, yes.
And I think from what I remember, the way ANZ really did go literally level by level down from the CEO.
They did, yeah. It was a very structured from the top to the bottom.
I guess I can sort of see some advantages of that. So what I'm now seeing sort of halfway through it, a slightly different version. I'm not even sure that what I'm seeing at the moment fits. Maybe it's kind of across multiple departments at once, but you end up, when you're halfway through, there's a lot of transition issues coming out because some of the product teams are in a domain structure, and some aren't. And then some of the channels and distribution channels aren't really planned to be. And then some of the enabling functions are still trying to figure out how they support both models at once. And that not taking that top-down approach, it feels quite a bit more chaotic because there's no sort of specific schedule. There's people who don't know if they're going to be impacted or not. And I think that top down would like flow a lot better.
Just a quick question, Lucy. Just a quick question in terms of what you said and also what Philippa just touched on. Do you think that the top down approach is limiting the team capacity to actually adopt Agile? Because we're also talking about Agile as being like a mindset and a behavior. So if we haven't laid that foundation for the individual teams, like how does that work when it's like when all of it is like has started from a top-down perspective?
Yeah. I think like the reality of that is that a lot of the kind of Agile mindset stuff has been baked into the values of the organization that people have kind of pretty much got KPIs around for their performance appraisal. So it's almost become mandated at an individual level, if that makes sense. I guess the only thing that is quite interesting is when I really think about this, there's kind of like there's an interpretation of Agile that I think all organizations make, and then I look at the kind of particular brand that I work with, and then you do sometimes wonder whether there is a restriction when it's commanded down, but I honestly just can't. You would have had to have been so successful, like so insanely successful, if you were in that kind of like bottom tier there, like a sub-function or an individual, to have kind of affected any change through that pyramid. That I just think the only way that you could adopt Agile in a really like heavily regulated and bureaucratic organization like a bank is with that absolute support and championing at that most senior stakeholder level.
It's a really good point, Lucy. It takes me to sort of some of the key themes and the co-design and adaptation. second one on the list is actually a really poignant call out, particularly to Sophie's question, because I sort of understood, so from your perspective, like top down, obviously executives are thinking about the business case, they think about the structural change, they're thinking about the resource, the FTE, etc. But what I've been seeing, and as a business we've been seeing, is not many people are giving the time of day to think about the structure, the governance, and the sort of connectivity between the functions. That actually needs to change as well. That needs to change in order to support Agile. It seems like there's a bit of a hit and miss with some of the transformations. And I know that CBA has also doing a top-down at the moment. Some of the other sort of financial institutions have also been sort of going down that path. But there's a real miss on how do we co-design other elements within the organisation. So one example is one of the banks have worked with. They have put in their structure, they've rolled it out, they've done all this change of work, they've put people in tribes, they've done all of this. But one of the gaps is they didn't actually think about the asset ownership that touches many different tribes, and who's going to have accountability over the asset and what changes happen in production and so forth. So there's kind of that co-design adaptation, the tools, the frameworks, the processes, how we bring on those internal SMEs, implementation of tools and whatnot. So that's probably one of the ones I wanted to highlight. Philippa, is anything on this list or not on this list that you think is a key theme more recently for what you're seeing?
Yeah, I thought the Agile principles versus the Agile frameworks was interesting. And I guess because Agile originally sort of came from software development, organizations tend to go to the tech teams first. But actually, it's, I think, really important for them to think upfront how they're going to involve the business teams or the SMEs. And in some cases, I'm seeing the business teams like finance or legal or marketing, they're kind of doing training so they understand what Agile's about and saying, well, maybe if you would like to do this, set up a little Kanban board for your work, which is great. And there's a lot of benefits of having Kanban for them to be independently managing that. And then in the technology teams, they're trying to put in the structured frameworks. But actually the governance gap I'm seeing is how you get the business teams working with the technology teams, because that's where I think that day-to-day collaboration and transparency is where the value is. And I'm seeing people kind of forgetting to do that. So the squad is just the technical people. If you're not a developer or a tester, you're not part of the squad. And, you can do some Agile stuff if you feel like it. But there's no business value on initiatives that only have the technology bit or only have the business bit. You really can only maximize business value by making sure the business people are doing what they need to do. And often they need to do stuff sooner before you start the technology, because that's when things go off track. Mm-hmm. So I think that integrating those teams in closely is a theme that it's been missed in some cases. I don't know how ANZ is doing that these days.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really good point as well, because it ties into sort of governance in general. The sort of last point there, I'm seeing quite a significant increase, and Lucy, you and I have spoken about this quite a lot. The governance element, the lack of oversight and lack of accountability that governance can provide is missing, and it is an afterthought. A lot of these organisations have gone, the start of their Agile journey was actually to eliminate a lot of the functions that did governance, whether it was PMO and whatever you want to call it, their functions that do those governance activity. And now they're starting to bring it back in. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I'm seeing a huge influx of roles advertised that relate to that space. It's just also another problem talking to one of the banks today, and now they've got a disconnect between how vendors and the methods and approaches they're taking are going to work or interweave with their new operating model, because everyone was doing waterfall before, but now it's like a hybrid. So there's definitely a lot of disconnect in that space, and I'm sure there's some others, Lucy, that you might want to add that you're seeing some of the key things.
Yeah, I think in the governance space, what I notice a lot is that there's still a requirement from a stakeholder perspective to understand exactly what a project is delivering and when. And I think that I sit in a lot of meetings where somehow that's allowed to have kind of got lost somehow. And some of those basic principles around, kind of like managing your scope and understanding and planning for resources and understanding and having the correct governance in to manage vendors. And yeah, we've got, I just noticed that we're a little bit more on the fly now with regard to like a steer code, like what do you need to know to ensure that we're delivering the right things. I feel that the kind of governance that I see has just got a lot more kind of tactical, and it makes it harder to answer those bigger questions around, just things like, well, when are you going to finish, and what exactly are we going to get?
Philippa, did you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, well, and I guess where the organisation I'm working at the moment, they're much earlier in their agile journey than ANZ, and there is still these kind of governance processes and they're trying to design these agile governance processes, and it's sort of generating some really interesting things where above a certain discretion, so there's product domains, and above a certain point, once an initiative costs over governance, quite an arbitrary number. And so there's this concept that the things that are within the domain are low governance, and the things that are over that threshold are high governance. And really, if they can be a bit more mature with that agile, it's not really, shouldn't be less governance. It's just a different type of governance. And I think they're going to kind of also, when they try to implement that, they're going to struggle with the people can arbitrarily make break a project into two smaller projects, and then they'll be both under that threshold.
Yes.
And things like that. It just becomes a little bit, it all becomes a bit artificial, rather than sticking to the principles of, as you said, what are we delivering, when, and for how much, those basic things. They're kind of losing track of that.
It sounds very sort of old school waterfall. We don't have 100% requirements. Agile is about uncertainty and understanding that as you go along. Maybe by showcases, the steerco or the executives can understand what's being delivered. So it's not like at the very end, you don't have these long, 12-month, 24-month projects. You break it up into MVP chunks so that people can see what's happening, because they can always provide feedback, and things change so much in 6 months that what you wanted in 2 years' time is, that changes. I think unless it's a regulatory project where you have fixed requirements,
yes.
Customers change. Ask someone 6 months compared to 2 years, it's very different.
It's actually really point out this, so that ties into the second sort of thing on the screen around adjusting strategy on the fly. It's like the organization's ability to interpret and adjust strategy in real time without introducing like waste and chaos. And that's something that there's some even execs that, are not really there yet across different organizations, not really there yet. They, the idea of saying that I want all of this scope, but not realizing you actually have a limited amount of capacity in your, your workflow. They're not getting that. And so I think there's some real big challenges there. But at the moment, we're seeing a pause from the organizations we're talking to. They're pausing when they're taking the time to reflect. They're taking the time to see what actually has been going on for the last 2 or 3 years. Are we hitting the metrics we aimed for? Are we getting the result? How are we going to adjust to the COVID situation that's happened, the remote working, the loss of talent? A lot of things like that are happening. And so they are really paying attention quite closely to that at the moment. So, yeah, it's a really interesting sort of space. I'm keen to kind of just close us out today with some ideas and opportunities that we could take away. just thinking about, there's a few on the screen at the moment, but I'm keen to, again, get some expertise, advice. Lucy, if you want to kick us off with an idea, an opportunity, something that the team and the group can take away, and then we'll go to Philippa as well.
I think for me, I guess because my area of interest is predominantly people, and I'm doing some study at the moment, some NLP training and coaching. And so I think for me, where my journey's going with agility and what I try to bring to my work is the mindset component of Agile and what it really means to be Agile. So I think there's a real opportunity around supporting people to get comfortable with failure, and you know, kind of talking about that and being open about that and being vulnerable about what that looks like. And also, I think there's a lot of opportunity around change. As people, we generally don't do that well with change, and there's so much of it kind of going on. So that's an area that I'm really interested in, because a lot of the kind of programs that I work on, it's often when you get to that point that the kind of often the value can be can start to degenerate, because we just haven't done enough around relationships and preparation and you know, setting expectations around change. So yeah, that's where I think the real kind of opportunity is now. I think we get the process, like we understand the process, but it's how do you really engage the people in that and skill them up with the kind of softer skills needed to deliver successfully.
Thank you, Lisa, for that. Philippa?
Yeah, I guess my thoughts were probably a little bit similar. I was trying to think of one that was different, but it really did overlap. Which is
sorry, that's annoying, isn't it?
Maybe that's interesting that you know, my thoughts were the same. I guess I was looking at the point around adaptive governance and thinking of this the client I'm working with at the moment, and you know, I've brought up a lot of that big problems they have and things that are really where they're actually kind of struggling and they're kind of missing a lot of the point and they haven't yet got to the value. But the other thing I'm seeing is that the people, the core team that are working on this transformation are really working really well together, and they're kind of they've certainly got the message that they can't wait to be 100% perfectionist. They need to just try something, and they really are really willing to test and learn things, and that's actually got quite a good, you know, positive vibe in the team, when it really could be like, if you look at it from another angle, it's going to be, there's a big hill for them to still go up. But I think that cultural, they've kind of got that cultural aspect working in that core team, and they've got quite a positive outlook, which has really made the difference. And so, you know, I think they'll get there in the end.
Yeah, awesome. I echo completely the people side and the adaptive governance. That's a big part of what I'm spending a lot of time talking about at the moment. And I think that the bigger organisations, the bigger banks have got so much dysfunction then more than they had before. Before they were quite structured and rigid, but things worked, even if it took you 3 months to get an outcome. But now I'm seeing that you're actually struggle to even know where you need to go for certain information, because the accountability is split across, you know, all these different tribes, and they're all creating their own frameworks and processes using the same tools to do the same thing in different ways. And it's just complicated. So now it's about bringing that sort of adaptive governance lens so that we can bridge the gap between delivery and governance, which is definitely a missing part of the puzzle. Any final questions or comments from anyone else on the call? Tom, Alex, Sue, Lani, so if anyone wanted to add anything for our close out for today. If you do think of anything, you're welcome to reach out, connect with me, and I'm happy to follow up. We do have a white paper that will go through this in more detail, quite a lot more detail. We've got a significant amount of work that's going on behind the scenes, interviewing others in the banking and financial services space, and insights around that, as well as some more detail around some opportunities and trends and things you can do, some practical takeaways. It'll be on our website next month. So if you just would like to know when that you receive that, just subscribe. It'll be free. It'll be coming out next month, and we'll share it.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?